Please be seated. Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a correction to what I told you before the break. I looked at about 3 different maps last night. I think the Cambodia road map that has the whole country, you can't actually see the name Phnom Penh. You can see the highway. But there is a map in evidence of Takao province, which is E3/10638. E3/10638. That is a map for the province with the in which you can see Phnom Penh at the border area.
And Counsel for Nonjia, you may resume your questioning.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, before the break we were speaking about the transportation of Vietnamese military uniforms. Do you recall seeing any Vietnamese people at the scene where these weapons were put in the GMC truck?
No, I did not.
Did you hear anyone speak Vietnamese when the military uniforms coming from Vietnam were put in the truck?
Because I was away from the others, I did not hear it, although I saw the vehicle coming.
Let me see if I could assist you a bit. Mr. President, I will be referring again to the transcript of the film footage that Robert Lemkin had with Toad. And just to be complete, I will be speaking about a Vietnamese person with the name Hai So or Hay So. In his testimony before the Supreme Court chamber, Toad denied knowing Hay So. However, in his when he was speaking with Robert Lemkin, he described Hay So very extensively. I will be referring, Mr. President, to E3/10665, English ERN 0115680 and 806, Khmer 0116845 and 52. Mr. Witness, Ham or Toad speaks extensively about a very close friend of Tan Nim named Hay So. He talks extensively about who Hay So was, but let me describe him for you, and maybe it's someone that you recognize. He was Vietnamese, spoke Khmer. His color was a bit whiter than the interviewer. He was rather tall, around 1.7 meters, crew-cut hair. Did you know or did you ever see a Vietnamese person called Hay So?
Witness, please hold on, and co-prosecutor, you have the floor.
A objection to using this part of this transcript. This is an enormous problem with the interviews that were conducted by Mr. Lemkin, which is that he or Tet Sambot were constantly reading confessions to the witnesses and then having them repeat that material. And if you look at the pages cited by counsel, it starts by indicating that a confession had just been read describing this person, and the information seems to come from that. So there is an issue here.
No, there is no issue whatsoever, Mr. President. It is indeed, there is mention of Hay So. However, Hay So was Vietnamese. He was never in S21. He is a high-ranking communist cadre from Vietnam. But what is important is that Todt or Ham offers information that he had himself about Hay So. He knew that Hay So was married to a woman from the poor ethnic minority, all kinds of details. So there is no relation whatsoever with any confession. So I really have no idea what the prosecution is talking about.
Well, let me make it clear what I'm talking about. At the start of these questions about Hay So, you'll see I just saw his confession, and I assume that this was either Nim or someone else's confession that you gave me, and saw Hay So. So what is not clear in the ensuing questions is what information has come from him being provided this confession to read, and what is information he knows himself. This is a repeated problem throughout these interviews that Lemkin conducted.
That is really not the case. He says that he knew Hay So personally. He says that Hay So was a close friend to Ru Nim. He describes him. The mere fact that someone is mentioned in the confession doesn't mean that we cannot ask questions. If Un or Koitun or Von Vet or whoever is mentioned in a confession, doesn't mean that we cannot ask any questions about Koitun or Von Vet or whoever anymore. That would be absurd. So it's clear from the record, clear from his interview with Lemkin, that he knew Hay So personally. And what I want to establish is, having read out the description, whether he remembers seeing Hay So either at the handing over of the military uniforms or somewhere else.
Sorry, do you want to make... Is the use of this document restricted to the description, or do you want to make further use of it?
No, I only want to know if he knows Hay So, and if he does, then that's fine. I don't have to give the description. If I give his description, maybe that is someone he knew at the time, or someone who might have been present when those uniforms were given. So just his physical description and whether he knows Hay So.
Counsel, you may only establish the identity of that person, and you cannot go beyond that.
Mr. Witness, do you know a Hay So Vietnamese revolutionary who was a close friend of Dan Nim and who meets the description I just gave you?
No, I did not see him.
No problem. One last question before I move to your arrest and your interrogation at Cacao prison. Um, there is evidence to suggest that many people within the Revolutionary Army of Cambodia considered the Vietnamese the arch enemy. As a matter of fact, this very trial chamber that before you are testifying now has adjudicated that there was a war going on between the liberation, April 75 and 79, between Cambodia and Vietnam. Didn't you think it was very strange and unusual for Tan Nim and others to go collect military uniforms from a country that Cambodia was at war with?
Witness, please hold on, and co-prosecutor, you have the floor.
Yes. First of all, I think he's misstating. The witness states in his interview that there was no conflict or fighting going on at the time. Second, he's asking for an opinion, a conclusion from the witness rather than factual evidence.
Rephrase.
Well, it is undisputed that the chamber said there was a war going on, an armed conflict. So that is so far undisputed. Mr. Witness, do you remember thinking that it was very unusual to collect Vietnamese uniforms from a country that DK was at war with or was going to be at war with?
Co-prosecutor, you have the floor.
And now this is a leading question. He's putting words and thoughts into the witness's mind rather than asking him an open question.
After so many questions, I think this is a perfectly appropriate question. Mr. Witness, were you not very surprised at what was going on?
No, this is actually really an opinion, but I think the question, did you consider it unusual? And now you can go ahead.
Did you consider it unusual, highly unusual, to collect military uniforms from Vietnam?
I did not know about that. They were given to us, and I did what I was assigned to do.
Let me see if I can get an answer from you in a different way, from a different angle. Mr. Witness, is it correct that after Nim was arrested, you were also arrested and then sent to Battambang City, where you were questioned before you were ultimately sent to Cacao prison?
Yes. It Cacao, that is in Moong.
And what do you remember about your questioning in Cacao prison? What did the interrogators ask you? What was the subject of your interrogation?
I was questioned how many years I had served him, and I said that I did not know anything besides my work.
Do you remember other questions they asked you? Mr. Witness, do you remember any other questions that the interrogators asked you?
I was asked whether I was linked to the UN network. I was asked repeatedly about that line of questioning while I was detained at Koko.
Let me read to you what you said to the interviewers, the OCIJ E3/9581, question and answer 41. Let me start with question and answer 40. I was interrogated twice a day. Question: how were you questioned? There were 2 interrogators, but I did not know them. They asked me the same question. Quote, how many times did you guy go to Vietnam? End of quote. I said I did not go to Vietnam. Then they said, quote, you guy is Tanim's messenger. I do not believe you. You guy definitely used to go to Vietnam. End of quote. Then they used an electric baton of handphone size to electrocute my neck until I fainted. End of the answer. Mr. Witness, do you recall that they repeatedly asked you about your trip to Vietnam to collect those military uniforms?
Co-prosecutor, you have the floor.
Counsel is misstating what the witness's answer was in here and trying to lead him. He was asked about going to Vietnam. There's nothing in here about military uniforms, so he shouldn't be injecting that into his question.
Fine. Mr. Witness, let me rephrase the question. Was the same question asked several times or many times, and was the question, how many times did you guy go to Vietnam?
I myself never went to Vietnam. I never saw any UN faces.
What did they mean with the question, how many times did you guy go to Vietnam? Did they explain that question?